we are going to find out how CEOs can succeed and why do they fail. You help businesses raise over $500 million. You have accelerated businesses to over 3,000 basis points growth stories. With such accolades behind you, tell me those key points as learnings for businesses and entrepreneurs who are listening to us today. Why do businesses fail? You mentored 100 plus CXOs across the globe. And by that virtue, you always say that most CEOs fail not because they lack strategies, but they fail because of people and relationships.
Relationships between two of you are as important as developing a strategy for your business. Only 12% of the businesses really cross the third generation. So I always say a bit of family and business and a bit of business and family.
MSMEs, kind of work that you do with MSMEs and for MSMEs. Harvard to MIT to INSEAD to leading a lot of successful entrepreneurs and leaders to coaching them across the globe. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of the Sunny Shah Show. Why do CEOs fail? Not because of strategies, but because of people and relationship. And we have an important guest today on today's show, through whom we are going to find out how CEOs can succeed and why do they fail. He's trained more than 100 plus CXOs across the globe. Please welcome Mr. Samir Sathe. Hi, Samir. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Pleasure is all mine, Sam. Before we get into who you are and what you do, I have a fundamental question so that my audience can understand you better. And that way we can get straight into our conversations. Samir, you helped through your expertise more than 900 plus organizations. You have consulted and helped venture capitalists and family offices, not just limiting to India, but across the globe. You hail from a family of artists and you decided to get on this adventure, helping so many successful entrepreneurs and businesses accomplish their end goals. Tell me more about your early days. Tell me more about what inspired you to get into this. And then eventually tell me more about your company, which is Samspace.
Sure. So thanks, Sunny. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. And this is a very favorite topic of mine. So the question that you're asking is very pertinent. So, if I really recall my early days, when I think about what is a memory that I have the memory of waking up and then listening to my father's practice every day, because he was a musician of Gwalior Gharana, Hindustani classical vocal music, Samir Sathe. My mother was a musician. She still practices. She's 87. And my sister is a Bharatnatyam guru. So I was born in a family that was sort of endowed with everything that is artistic, right? So I have those memories. One thing I understood then was all about creativity, right? Because art is all about creativity. And that's the parallel I draw between the art and entrepreneurship. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, entrepreneur is trying to create something.
Correct.
Entrepreneur is trying to solve a problem of the society at scale. And to be able to do that, one has to really sort of paint on a canvas as to what needs to be done. And that's a tremendously liberating experience. I think when I think back, and this is all in hindsight, that must have sort of caught my attention early. And also the other fact was that I have always been seeking some sort of knowledge. Anything which is unexplored, anything which is not explained, anything which is a mystic always attracts me. And I think these are the two things which kind of propelled me to sort of figure out what is it that I should do to be able to be meaningful, to contribute to others. And then when I realized that entrepreneurship is so critical for not only the livelihoods of people, but also to be able to make sure that we live in a better society tomorrow, I decided perhaps that's my calling.
Interesting.
So that's how I would figure it out. Of course, now that you're asking me this question, I'm thinking back, but I think that must have happened.
So tell me more about your 35 plus years of experience. What all you did, what led you to believe that this is the right trajectory, and how Samspace was born.
Sure. So if I really characterize my 35 years of experience, I basically sort of segment them into three buckets. The first is the early years when I learned about equity research. For the first 4 years, I was into equity research. That's when I thought about really making differences in the fortunes of the companies as an outsider, because then you make a recommendation on stock market of buy, sell, right?
Mhm.
But then I realized that you can make only a small difference sitting outside and making recommendations for people to make money on secondaries. But the real fun must be in making a difference from within. And that's when I started consulting, right? So Universal Consulting, which is a boutique consulting firm in Mumbai, I realized that's what I want to do. I want to make a difference in the fortunes of the companies from within. That's how I looked at consulting. So that's my first sort of brush with the first segment. I would call it early years.
Yeah.
When I decided to make a difference to the entrepreneurs. The second bucket is all my years at Universal Consulting and consulting, when I started looking at helping small and medium-sized enterprises, because they are the ones who need help, professional help, but they can't afford the big sort of consulting firms, reputed consulting firms such as McKinsey, BCG, Bain, and Big Four. And we decided to focus on that. So that was very important. So that's what I call sort of the second innings of mine. When I learned the ropes of consulting, I decided basically what is important. Knowledge is important. Action is important. You ought to do both. And you ought to also empower the entrepreneurs in developing those skill sets. Because at the end of the day, any abiotic change, any external force can only make a difference to a certain level. But if it's not changing from within, you cannot do it sustainably. And that's where I learned, that's what I call my second sort of phase. And the third phase is really when I started thinking about becoming an entrepreneur myself. That's when I sort of looked at the cusp of capitalism and philanthropy. And that's when I was headhunted into Vadvani Foundation. And that's where I sort of looked at making a difference to the entrepreneurs as an entrepreneur almost. I led India and Middle East offices, and that's where I started productizing consulting to make a difference, to empower the entrepreneurs with the skill sets. So that's where I believe the entrepreneurship segment started. And now here I am as an entrepreneur, as a founder and CEO of Samspace, which is basically an AI-augmented consulting and coaching blended implementation focused firm. So that's what I want to do. I want to make a difference in terms of action, making it happen on the ground, because unless the rubber hits the road, it's all gyan. And consultants are unfortunately known for gyan, but no action. I wanted to make that change. And the second thing is AI, which is everywhere. We hear those buzzwords everywhere, but what does it mean in the life of an entrepreneur? What does it mean in the life of the CXO? That's what I'm going to focus on. So that's what I do. Samspace does that, and it does not only in India but also in Middle East, in LATAM, certain countries of Europe. Because interestingly, Sunny, at the end of the day, the entrepreneurs and their problems are more similar than dissimilar. Everybody thinks, yeah, this industry is different, that industry is different, but I find fundamentally the problems are the same. It's knowledge deficit. It's really the time deficit. It's really the talent deficit. If you were to focus on these three things, it's the same.
Very interesting. You help businesses raise over $500 million. You have accelerated businesses to over 3,000 basis points growth stories. With such accolades behind you, tell me those key points as learnings for businesses and entrepreneurs who are listening to us today. Why do businesses fail?
That's a big question. And if you look at empirical studies that have been done in terms of tracing really what are the variables that impact the fortunes of the companies, why businesses succeed and why businesses fail, I think at least to my knowledge, there are three fundamental things that really happen. First is entrepreneurs unfortunately stop learning. At the certain stage of the life, when you want to do certain business, you have to have conviction that the business is going to work. Otherwise, you can't start a business. You have been an entrepreneur, I've been an entrepreneur, so we know this, right? So that optimism, conviction is needed. But there is a stage in life when entrepreneurs stop learning. They believe in their conviction too much, not to listen to others, not to pivot based on external stimuli. And that's where I feel the inability to pivot, inability to learn, inability to unlearn is really the first very important element that makes entrepreneurs fail. The second is I've seen that the entrepreneurs really do not engage in upskilling themselves. And this is related to the first point, but it is more about commitment than understanding, right? So there are a lot of people who are aware that they don't know what they don't know, but they don't want to act on it. So upskilling is all about making sure that they complement their skill set with others. They make sure that they themselves learn things which they ought to and put them into practice, right? So that's the second thing. And I think the third thing I would say is really strategic postures. And when I'm using this term purposely, that's because at the end of the day, one must remember that nothing is constant, right? So if one doesn't change your strategic game plan, your business partners, based on what you understand is going to work, one is going to face troubles. Fundamentally, these three things are the key, right? Then all about talent, leadership, execution, managing finance, managing money. These are all the functional things, but fundamentally at the root, these are the 3-4 things that really matter.
Adding to that point, you mentored 100 plus CXOs across the globe. And by that virtue, you always say that most CEOs fail not because they lack strategies, but they fail because of people and relationships. Can you give us some real life insights of what happens, why do they go wrong, so that people can avoid those pitfalls going forward?
Great question. I'll give an example. In fact, 2-3 examples come to my mind. Variety of settings, variety of countries, but I think these 2-3 examples stick with me. I remember a case wherein an owner, a founder, wanted to really look at giving the controls to the next generation. Next generation was not interested in the traditional business. They wanted to do something else. And we were involved in making that change at the organization. And it was a tough time because there was a communication breakdown between the previous generation and the next generation, right? And the point there was, it was not about understanding the strategy about what the organization needs to do. I think they were pretty clear about that. But it's about inability to align with each other that really resulted in either slowdown or the entrepreneurs being misaligned, both the generations. And that had tremendous impact on the people, right? Because people observe, people take cues. And these are humans, right? At the end of the day, we are not machines. So when we start to feel, that's when I think it really breaks down. I've seen that. And in that one particular case, the organization was growing very well. It was expanding very well. Even the new businesses they had crafted and we had strategized for them, we were implementing it. But because of this communication breakdown, it resulted into complete anarchy. There was a confusion amongst the people and they couldn't implement it. And then it went to spiral. And that's when we had to step in and then do the change management, make them realize that relationships between two of you are as important as developing a strategy for your business and getting that implemented. So when people miss that, it's always a problem. So feel what you do, understand, give importance to emotion. We all feel, oh, this is hard business. Don't worry about crying. Don't worry about emotions, but they're incredibly important. In fact, I'm writing a book on the role of emotions on organizational longevity. So this is one thing which is very important. Another example comes to my mind is when you think about people and relationships, it's also about how the relationships between the job creator and the job seeker changes over a period of time. So I've seen in bad times in COVID, the nature of the relationship between an employee and an employer is quite different. They were supporting each other in some cases, and in some cases it was a problem because the cash flow was a problem. People were being sacked, right? So the nature of the relationship between the superior and the subordinate, for lack of better words, in fact, I don't like those words, but let's say the job creator and the job seeker does change, right? And when you start to realize that, you stop playing the roles which are important for that situation. You tend to lock yourself in that particular position or role that you're playing. And that often I've seen is a problem, right? So when you think about relationships and the dynamics between the people, whether somebody's a boss or somebody's an employer, somebody's a colleague, somebody's a peer, somebody's an external vendor, and internally, you must remember that your roles could change depending on the situation, and you have to respect that. And that's when the relationships play a very important role. So these are 2-3 things that I've observed that in organizations, they really make a difference.
Interesting. Let's talk about family offices, because that's one of your strengths of what your firm does. For our audience's interest, let's first define what a family office truly means, shall we?
Yeah. Sure. No, that's a good question. And in fact, in the recent article that I wrote, I talked about how patient capital is winning. And a lot of the family offices today, they have realized that they have wealth, but they need to organize their wealth. And the empirical evidence is very clear. Only 12% of the businesses really cross the third generation. So you think about the wealth destruction that happens beyond third generation, and family offices have realized that. So one of the things that family offices must do is to make sure that they start recognizing the early signs of where the wealth creation stops happening. And when we think about family office as a definition, it means, basically, to put it very simply, it's about managing and organize your family's affairs, whether it is wealth or whether it is relationships. And that's how I characterize it.
Right.
Because it's all about getting the governance in a family done and making sure that the wealth creation happens within that governance framework. So I always say a bit of family and business and a bit of business and family. That's what is required.
You said the family offices are the new kingmakers when it comes to venture capitals.
Yes. And I've taken a shot at it, I must say. Right now, there are weak signals that indicate to me that in some cases, they have reported actually perhaps equal to or better than some of the performances that VCs have done. So the median IRR that family offices have reported is in the region of plus or minus 1%. And you think about it, right? Family offices haven't enjoyed the degrees from Harvard or Stanford. They have sort of bequeathed their wealth to the next generations, but there is something in them that keeps them going. If you really trace the history of all the long living, profitable, growing businesses over 100 years, 200 years. In fact, Japan is a very good example of some of the businesses. There are some businesses in Asia, some businesses in Europe as well. You will find one thing: the value system continues very well, and that is passed on to generations extremely well. Now, I feel that a combination of a great consistency in value system and better management of money probably is a great combination, right? When you think about professionalism, you always think about being clinical, right? You hire somebody for a job, you get the job done, you focus on the KPIs and key performance indicators, you look at the deliverables, and you get the job done. It almost seems robotic. But I feel the family offices have a necessary ingredient in them, which is basically the value system that binds them together. And if that is accompanied with excellent management of money, it ought to win.
Interesting. And most of the family offices that you consult, are they India-based? Are they abroad?
They're both. It's some in India because I started in India, but now there is a lot of demand coming up in GCC, Middle East. There is a lot of demand coming up also in European families, right? So I'm realizing that the nature of the problems is pretty much the same across. Obviously, there are different stages of evolution. Let's put it this way. But yeah, the family offices are spread across. Yeah.
Samir, I loved your take on human and digital brain conflict. Can you tell our audience a little bit more about it, please?
Yes, of course. And that's a big topic because when you say conflict, Sunny, that itself is a question mark on, everybody's faces and in the minds and the hearts. See, remember, at the end of the day, technology is our friend. And it's when you start fearing something, you develop a conflict. Once you understand something, the fear goes away, and then you tend to befriend, whether it's an object or subject. So that's the fundamental thing that all of us should realize, that digital brain and human brain can coexist. They can become each other's friends, provided they treat each other as their friends. Today, we are suffering from fear. We are suffering from lack of knowledge. We are suffering from early signs of too much money going therein without the commensurate proof of scalable returns coming from digital brain, and which is why there is anxiety, which is why there is concern. But in my work, when I sort of interact with owners, founders, I realize two things. One is that they always talk about, "Arey, kuch to bata do yaar, ye kya AI chal raha hai?" Basically, everybody's talking about AI. There is so much on AI and media. Chal kya raha hai? So they know that it's important. They realize that it's going to be there, but they don't know what to do with it, right? So I think the first thing is to demystify what it means, how it's going to be your friend, not a foe, and therefore it need not be a conflict in the first place, right? It could be a very, very collaborative posture between the two. And ये सबसे important चीज है. जिस दिन आप इसको समझोगे, that day you will win, basically, right? So that is one thing that I always realize. The second thing is that I've seen even the large organizations actually making commitments on AI projects, artificial intelligence, Gen AI, agentic AI. These are all the buzzwords that you see here and talk at parties. But very few have gone through the first principles in recognizing what is it that is really important, right? What is it that one must do to solve? लोग क्या समझते हैं, टेक्नोलॉजी लाओ, पैसा कमिट करो, ठीक है, इट इज अ साइन ऑफ योर प्रोग्रेस एंड यू विल बी एबल टू गेट रिजल्ट आउट ऑफ इट. ऐसा नहीं होता. Basically, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're a founder, whether you are a CEO, or whether you have just joined an organization, AI is going to be a reality. It is going to be our daily thing. So recognize it, accept it, don't be in a denial, and then start befriending it. Just then say you start befriending it, you will start learning about each other better. Then the digital brain and human brain can coexist simply as simply as you and I are sitting here. We should be conversing just like this with a digital and AI brain. I mean, think about this. This is very interesting. जब भी आप समझते हैं कि human brain and digital brain are two separate things, and then we have heard about artificial intelligence will help you make better decisions. Sometimes it's just information, sometimes it's just automation. Sometimes it will decide for itself, right? And it will decide for you. Sometimes you recognize that as a substitute to what you would have done with a human. Sometimes you recognize that as an augmentation to what your human would have done. But एक बात आप ठीक तरह से समझो कि this is here to stay, right? तो जैसे ही हमारा रिलेशनशिप कभी डेवलप होता है, whether you take two people, we always think about developing a relationship between two people firstly by understanding each other. नहीं तो कैसे आप रिलेशनशिप डेवलप करोगे, right? उसके वही तरीका आप अपनाओ. I think you start recognizing AI as one more human being. Suddenly your lens will change. Suddenly you will feel differently. Suddenly you will start realizing कि उसको समझना जरूरी है. And when you think about that, it will become your friend. It's no longer a conflict.
Very interesting point you brought on table, talking about how AI will reshape leadership. Let's look at it from the next decade perspective, or the next 10 years. How do you think this technology will play a key role in reshaping and probably disrupting the way leadership is?
You know, I always, when I really sort of crystal ball gaze into future, what's likely to happen to leaders, and then there's the whole phenomenon of AI, I feel AI is going to become like your trusted confidant. It has a potential to become one. Let's put it this way, right? Imagine that you're a CEO, or you're a young generation who has just picked with sort of lot of wealth, and then you want to make sure that the wealth creation is happening. You want to make a difference to the society, to the people that you hire, to people that you serve, etc. And now you need some trusted confidant who is unbiased, who could potentially develop emotions, by the way, and at the same time who could give you unbiased, objective help in making sound decisions. That's how I see the future as a positive side to it, right? Think about, now flip it, right? Think about the negative side of it. If we were not to do these things properly, AI could turn into one of the biggest disasters in the next 10 years. Why? Because if you are not able to think about AI as your confidant, and the algorithms are wrong, your data quality is wrong, the basis on which one is making a decision is wrong, then whatever you do in terms of your algorithm is not going to help you out, right? Basically. So it could turn into a devil, or it could turn into your confidant, right? So I think the leaders must recognize this very well and use the AI technology to their advantage by shaping it well. Because at the end of the day, when we develop algorithms, who are we? We are humans, right? We are developing algorithms and then training the data set in an artificial intelligence. Is basically we are training the data set either based on rules, or we are letting it learn based on its natural course. So when you do the latter, it basically takes a natural course of action. And I believe that's when the AI will start making sound decisions, unbiased decisions, and return into your confident if you're a leader. So I feel that's what is likely to happen. You take any industry, whether it is B2C, whether it is B2B, whether it is government, whether it is the decisions of many people doing it, or it's the decision of one person doing it. It's as simple as what you want to eat and what you should eat tomorrow. That could be decided by AI. I mean, I strongly believe it has a potential to really think about 80 to 90% of the things that we do, AI can potentially do, provided you are able to actually train that data set in an unbiased manner. And that is very critical to me. And that's how I see the future panning out. I think if you look at the current state, what is happening since 2020, 21, there is a lot of investment going on, billions of dollars being poured in, and you hear of all these large deals. But even the mid-sized organizations and smaller organizations started realizing it. You talk about ChatGPT, Perplexity, you talk about Claude, you talk about DeepSeek, Hajar LLMs are coming, so many tools are coming. And whether you want to be a user or a developer, or whether you want to be a beneficiary, whichever role you want to take, I think it's very important to think about it's being channelized to solve the right problems. The way we work, the way we live needs to be rethought. It needs to be reimagined. That's when AI will help you the most. It's not about just automating. It's not about just building a data set to make algorithms to make sounded decisions on information that is given to you, right? It's about rethinking and reimagining the way you behave, the way you work. That is when the workflows will be managed better. That is when you will realize that it will start to look like a friend in future. And that's what leaders need to do.
We move on from this into something very interesting. MSMEs.
My pet subject.
Government of India is putting enough emphasis in terms of investments, in terms of benefits. Our industries are also trying to support to make sure that MSMEs get the fair share or the lion's share of the businesses. You've been recently awarded MSME Enabler of the Year. So first of all, congratulations for the same.
Thank you. God's grace. Thank you.
Tell me more about the kind of work that you do with MSMEs and for MSMEs.
Yes, I think there are probably 2-3 types of interventions I do with MSMEs. One is in the nature of coaching, which is to me very fundamental, because like the thing that I mentioned earlier, that if you don't change from within, it's very difficult for organizations to change sustainably. So people who manage the organizations need to change from within. So that's the first form of sort of intervention, is coaching them, changing their mindset, changing them, making them realize what they need to do, what they need to think, what they need to know. So that's the first kind of intervention. The second kind of intervention is about their organizations. And most of my work basically, and the organization's work, Samspace, that I do, is all about making change happen. And it's all about growth. So if you are 10 crores, if you're $10 million, so you want to become $100 million or 100 crores or $300 million or 3,000, for example, crores, then Samspace is there to help you out, because it's a scale. Unfortunately, if you look at the history of last 200 years, the scale comes at a cost of quality and the cost of speed. And this is my favorite sort of triangle that I always tell people, right? Quality at speed and at scale. It's hard to get this. If you have scale, usually you tend to slow down, or you tend to sort of deteriorate in quality, because you can't manage quality at scale. If you have great quality, I've seen a lot of organizations and MSMEs, they don't scale up. They just manage what they want to do it. They do it very well, but they don't scale up. And when you don't scale up, it basically you're shrinking and people don't realize it, right? So therefore you need to solve this. And then it's all about, you get the right direction, you get the right sort of scale, but speed. Speed becomes important, right? What is the rate of your growth? So one of the first things that I do in my when I look at the changing the organizations is about telling them how to optimize this triangle of quality, speed, and scale. So that's the kind of intervention I do with the organization. So that's the second one. And the third, I would say, it's a much more fundamental in nature, is about equipping them with the knowledge. If it goes beyond coaching and consulting, because when they start understanding how to create a system to start learning on the regular basis, I've solved the problem for a little longer time than even if I'm not engaged with those organizations, they still can solve their problems on their own, right? So when in coaching, you tend to sort of, and coaching and mentoring, people use it very loosely. But at the end of the day, you tend to solve the problem of the organization, and you tend to solve the problem of the owner or the founder or the CXO individually and institutionally. But you should leave with them something that they can do on their own, which will help them and act as their trusted confidant. And which is one of the parts that we are trying to develop as AI augmentation, because that's the lasting gift that you can give to the beneficiary. So these are the three kinds of interventions I do with MSMEs. And when it comes to scalability and going forward, like I mentioned earlier, I think when I look at Mexican businesses, when I look at Indian businesses, when I look at even some European businesses, you're basically dealing with those 2-3 things at the bottom line, right? So if you want to solve them, it's all about strategy. It's also about people. So I'm also a co-founder at a company called SoulBridge, which talks about the leadership hiring, and it's also powered by assessments of people.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, like we said earlier, right? People and strategy go hand in hand. You may have good people with bad strategy. You may have great strategy but bad people. You're not going to get the result. So one of the things that we want to do is to make sure you fix those problems. You fix the strategy problem, you fix the people problem, and then you solve it together for the MSMEs. So I think these are some of the kinds of interventions that we tend to do.
Interesting. A lot of emphasis on Viksit Bharat these days.
Yeah. Indeed.
With the Prime Minister's vision of 2047. What role do you think companies like yours can play in that ambitious objective?
Yeah, good question. It is ambitious objective. It is audacious, for the simple reason that if you look at today's ecosystem in India, we have about different estimates exist, but to my knowledge and based on our estimates, we are about 73 million MSMEs, right? But if you think about what's happening in terms of the mix of these MSMEs, 98 or 99% of them are mini or micro.
Okay.
They're very small. 0.5% of our SMEs are what we call mid-size. And if you look at the government definition, anybody up till 500 crores is basically what we call MSME.
Right.
But to realize the 2047 vision and to truly make it effective, we should at least have, based on our modeling, 5 to 7% of SMEs as mid-size. And that's a very tall order, from 0.5% to 5%. If you think about a scale of where India is, that's a magnanimous goal, right? And it's a tall order, right? So it needs to be sought. So I feel the role that we need to play is making sure that the mini and micro turn into small, the small turn into mid-size enterprises fastest.
That's your focus.
That's the fundamental biggest focus of our organization, to make them scale. And remember what I said earlier, scale with quality and with speed, right? If you achieve 10x in 100 years, well, it's not going to be any meaningful.
Yeah, you're not even beating inflation, right? For that matter.
Exactly, right? I mean, you want to do 10x in 3 years. You want to do 10x in 5 years. But if you do 10x in 3 years and 5 years, and then your net promoter score and your customer satisfaction goes down, I don't want that either, right? We want to do at 10x with great quality, customers being happy, your employees being happy, and fastest. And that's the role that we want to play. Essentially, it really boils down to these 2-3 things, Sunny.
So let's say if some of our audience is their MSMEs in the micro or small scale, how do they reach out to you with the right kind of questions? What would be those initial steps that you would recommend so that they can have meaningful value out of your consultation?
Sure. Firstly, I think we have our homepage, consult samspace.com, and go there and then check out. It sort of kind of gives information about consultsamspace.com and about myself and my colleagues, and we have the leadership to be able to take it through. The second is that we have developed a diagnostic tool which basically enables these MSMEs or these founders to ask themselves questions which really matter. And it allows them to introspect, to align themselves to what they need to do. So which is like a, think about it. when we are ill, we do pathology tests, right? We go there and we check our blood samples and we do certain parameterized testing. Think about that we are checking some vitals,
Right.
to make sure that your perception and reality match with each other, right? And that's the first thing that they need to do. And once they do that, then they're happy to sort of engage with us, either in a coaching or consulting sort of format, or both perhaps, because then we know that we are there to help them, handhold them on the ground. So we are not one of those gyan-giving, brilliant people who will basically leave you, giving you a thick report, flashy report. We are not those people. We want to be those people who are going to be with you throughout your journey. And that's the implementation focus that we refer to. I mean, it's not only about Sanskrit. It's about the fundamental philosophy about knowledge and action that I spoke about earlier, right? Give knowledge, be hungry for knowledge, but make sure that you implement, you act on it, right? And that's the motto. And that's what we want to sort of carry this MSME community with us to be able to live that on a daily basis.
How many MSMEs in India do you currently coach?
So at any given point of time, it all really depends on the capacity.
Sure.
But at any given point of time, I personally look at not more than 3-4.
Okay.
Simply because it's a very intensive effort. You're trying to change a person, and you're also trying to change the organization. But yeah, I mean, with an extended family, with teams and my other colleagues, etc., at any given point of time, we'll be able to serve tens of hundreds of MSMEs. Partly because there is an AI augmentation angle to it, which allows us to scale.
Sure.
There is also a human big factor, which is important because today, I mean, at least today, everybody wants to have fast results, but nobody wants to actually commit themselves for a change. Everybody wants results yesterday, but nobody wants to take efforts to be able to do that. And one of the things that you see it in your media industry, right? What is our attention span today? How many videos which are of greater than 1 minute have you released? Very few, because our attention span is gone, right? Which is a sad thing, actually, because at the end of the day, but does it have patience? And you require patience, right? So I would say at any given point of time, if one is able to give justice to all these MSMEs and the different sort of entrepreneurs, and that's the sort of lens that we look at, and that's the threshold that we look at. So it could extend from tens to hundreds, depending on how critical, how complex the problem is.
Under the MSME framework, Government of India does give certain privileges and benefits to these organizations, right? As a part of your consultation, when you talk to them, can they be made cognizant of these? Because I'm sure a lot of people don't know about their benefits.
Yeah, which is one of the unfortunate things. Like if you ask an MSME how many of them know ONDC, how many of them know the schemes which are there for them to do R&D,
Right.
to actually start a startup, to ask for a R&D budget, to actually innovate. A lot of people actually don't know, unfortunately. So as a part of our consulting, yes, we make them aware of it, but we basically make them fundamentally change the way they look at the external information and internal information, so that they don't need us to bring to them the knowledge of government schemes. They themselves should be able to develop those systems internally so that it's on the radar all the time. That's the point that we always drive at. And then the rest becomes easy because you have enabled a system, not a particular component, and that system operates on its own.
Very interesting. So you are quite convinced that the Viksit Bharat mission is for real, and organizations like you are going to play a significant role.
The dream is for real.
Okay.
I will be cautiously optimistic on this, because there are lots and lots of components of the system that need to change.
Sure.
We need to very quickly make sure that India is competitive, not only in certain pockets of our industries, but at large. The professionalism needs to improve significantly. The ability to basically manage wealth needs to be improved significantly. If you look at the districts that we have, 800 plus, we need inclusive growth. We need micro clusters growth. Today, if you look at what's happening to India, a lot of people are migrating to Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Hyderabad, etc., Pune, etc. But you know, where they come from, there are inherent assets which are not monetized. I always say, right?
Yeah.
I mean, every district has something to offer. And if you are able to create a demand and supply engine in those districts and internationalize them, we could really have inclusive growth for India in a micro clusters, and that cluster's growth will far outpace the skewed growth that you are witnessing today. So I think the recipe for India needs to be done at the system level. So there's obviously some government role there, but every private company or every individual who starts becoming a small entrepreneur or even large entrepreneur starts thinking about doing change in their own ecosystem, it will matter a lot. It will matter a lot. So therefore, I would say 2047 dream of Viksit Bharat is absolutely needed. There is no question about it, because it's inspirational, it's motivational. It really propels you out there. Everything starts with a dream, right? But at the end of the day, the realities on the ground need to be solved, right? So it needs a monitoring mechanism. It needs folks like us. It needs it needs people who want to change, and to create that need and want to change is very fundamental. I feel if we are able to ignite that, then we can see a far better future, and there will be a greater probability of achieving this Viksit Bharat dream of ours.
Moving again to your personal side, right, from Harvard to MIT to INSEAD to leading a lot of successful entrepreneurs and leaders, to coaching them across the globe. But let's look at the flip side of the coin. Can you, as you go back to your journey, can you identify that one failure in your life that became a turning point for you as an individual, and the rest is history?
Absolutely. First of all, I have a master's degree from NCR. Harvard and MIT, I've just done a few courses. So, but like I said, I've always been interested in seeking knowledge, right? So anything that now we are having this discussion, I'm also learning something from you, consciously or unconsciously, right? That's very important, and that's as an attitude is very critical. When I trace back, thinking about the failures that I had, yes, there have been turning points, there have been inflection points that I've looked at, and one or two that come to my mind. It was my first job, and I remember that I was doing some work, and what that was assigned to me, and I had a particular notion of how to do it perfectly, right? And I did that, and then I was very hands-on or very micromanagerial with my people. I was given some responsibility of my people, right? I did not look at the people factor. I only looked at what needs to be done for the job. That was my big learning, because I realized that I ignored the human element, and people who I supervised did not feel motivated. Right? That was my first job. And I learned that for doing a great job, sustainability, it's not enough just to think about how to do that job and develop a skill to do that job.
Yeah.
We also need to inspire people who are with you to be able to do that job brilliantly, because no one person can solve the problem. And that was a big learning. So I remember in one of the first assignments, I had not done as well as I wanted to, but that is a big learning. The second learning was, I remember in one of my consulting engagements, I remember a discussion internally. We were supposed to sort of recommend a change to the organization headcount reduction. And it's a tough one, right? You basically are in a dilemma whether to recommend to a client not having certain people on payroll. Basically, you will be responsible for the losses of jobs, right? And now we are all talking about job creation in India. So that is a big moment for me. But then I realized that how the system objectives are superior to the individual objectives, because that's when I realized that, and that is a failure of me when I was thinking about it then, that hey, you can't recommend to a client that you should not have those people because it's against humanity. But I didn't realize that by continuing the status quo, I would have actually resulted. My recommendations would have resulted in actually the loss of many more livelihoods in future, right? Because the organization would have gone bust.
Yep.
They wouldn't have performed. And as a result of 5 people being unhappy, I would have cost 500 people being unhappy. So, these are very important moments. And I had not realized them because I was young, rookie. And I remember. So that was a turning moment. Again, there's something that I remember, and something which is very critical. That's when you make a decision between what is important at the local level and global level. And, then later in life, when we did so much work, and now that I'm sitting and reflecting on my 33 years so far, I realized that basically these are all important learning experiences that really make you realize that you don't know what you don't know. Even after 33 years, I cannot claim that I know it all. The day I feel that I know it all, I'm dead. And I feel that there's so much to be done. There's so much to be done. And that's when I realized that these are the moments, whether you call them failures or whether you call them learning. I always prefer to call them learning moments. Either you succeed or you learn. There is nothing else. So when you learn from these, it's very important then to sort of shape your behaviors accordingly. And that's when you put to action what you have learned.
Yep.
Right. Otherwise, I could be a therapist sitting on this chair and then giving you a gun. Doesn't help. Right. I should go out there and just do it. Otherwise, don't do it.
If you were to give one piece of advice to a 25-year-old founder, what would that be?
That's a hard question. Let me think. To a young founder, a 25-year-old, that's the case that you give me. At the end of the day, 25-year-old needs to realize that they have another 75 years ahead of them, and every minute counts.
Yep.
Right? Is the importance of realizing how you productively use that time I would say is a very big thing, because in this is embedded a lot of other things that we spoke about briefly in the last 45 minutes. But I think ability to recognize that how to put the time to productive use is the single most thing that I will always sort of focus on. And we all have seen the founders hustling and they say, oh, I've never slept. I've been working for 20 hours. I'm a young guy. I can manage it. It's also bad management of time, by the way. So I don't imply that you keep on working and put every minute to basically your working life as a founder, as an entrepreneur.
Yep.
Actually, that could be suicidal to you, because you need some free time. You need some quiet moments, because that's when you learn. When your mind is at rest, you learn the best, basically, right? So I would say to a 25-year-old founder, my biggest advice would be learn how to balance your time, because that's when you learn to balance your energy, and that's when you learn to balance your relationships. I mean, if you are watching and if you think you're a young founder at 25, in fact, even if you're a 55-year-old founder, it doesn't really matter. You must manage these three things: relationships, time, and energy. I would say, I think these are the most critical things.
That's fantastic. So if I were to summarize, I would start by saying it's been a masterclass for CEOs and founders.
Thank you.
You've been amazing the way you kind of made very simple yet meaningful insights of how people can just tweak things and the outcomes can be significantly better for them.
Thank you.
But if I were to look at it, putting people first, having a lot of emotions and empathy in the way people lead others, focus on interpersonal relationships, having the right knowledge, vision, having the right guidance, having the right coach to ensure that your businesses are not just moving, they are moving at a faster pace. Everybody and with quality. And as that happens, looking at not just percentile growth, but exponential growth in multiples could be an outcome that is possible.
Absolutely.
So all of this put together gives a lot of information on table. And I'm sure this is a great starting point for a lot of our viewers. And they will have a lot of things to take away and then get back to you. And obviously, when that happens, they can reach out to you on a one-on-one basis as well.
Sure, anytime.
But Samir, it has been a pleasure hosting you today. I think your knowledge, your experience is of immense value to our country and to any other family businesses or any other venture capitalists that you serve across the globe. Because if you look at the ROI of what this can and a few percentile in terms of multiples that the organization can gain, then we know what we are talking about. So with that being said, we come to the end of this episode. It was a true honor having you today. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Sunny. It's my pleasure. And at the end of the day, like I said, this interaction that we have had just now, going back to the principle that I've always cherished, is that think about how this 45 minutes could be put to use, 45, 60 minutes, I don't know what's the length of our discussion, but can be put to use on a daily basis, because that the moment is gone, never comes back. Money can come back. Relationships can be sort of repaired. Time never comes back. And the day we think about this notion, we'll realize it's important. So let's be judicious about whatever we do.
Beautiful line. Time never comes back.
Never.
I wish Samspace is all the success.
Thank you.
And may you continue to add a lot of value, a lot of wealth to your customers' pockets.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we come to the end of today's episode. It has been a pleasure hosting Samir and getting a lot of insights from his perspective of how leaders and CEOs can build better businesses for tomorrow. Please continue to subscribe to our channel. Please click on the bell icon so you don't miss on any other episodes. And let's continue to have such meaningful conversations in future as well. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.